a world according to God look like? We can preach about this world. We can talk about our relationship with God. We can talk about the love of God. We can talk about the reconciliation that we need with God. We can talk about our trust in God, can't we? We can talk about all those things. And we can preach eloquently about those. We can talk about the reign of God. And we can talk about the reign of God and the kingdom of God that's out there, over there. But when we really talk about the reign of God, if we really preach about our relationship with God, somehow we don't end up like Jesus. Because Jesus preached about the love of God, preached about his relationship with God, preached about reconciliation of God, talked about trust of God, talked about the reign of God being at hand, and what happened was he ended up getting murdered over it. We all look pretty healthy, right? We all look pretty healthy. The reality of the cross in our lives is really a very difficult reality. Because if we look at our lives, if we look at that cross, we really don't get very bent out of shape. When you see Jesus on that cross, he definitely is bent out of shape. His human image is distorted by the sinfulness of humankind. And so the story that we need to proclaim as God's followers is that God is love. We have to be that voice. I think we sang that at the beginning. We need to be the voice of God. So the story is that God is love. And love has to be made concrete. It can't remain an abstract description of humanity. It can't remain something, a concept. And it's difficult for us to stop turning Jesus into an idea, a teaching, or a philosophy. So we could go out all over the world and we could teach the idea about Jesus. We could go out all over the world and teach the philosophy of Christianity. We could go all over the world and tell everybody how great Christianity is, but unless we make it concrete in our lives, unless that love is made real and concrete, the world and society, the life and the dignity of people is never going to be realized. It's never going to be made real. People's lives need to be upheld, and a dignity has to be upheld. Hell, that has to be real. The love that we preach has to be made real. It has to be tangible. It has to be something that we can touch, something that we can see, something that we can hear, something that we can feel in terms of our lives. The love of God has to be manifested in the tenderness of our lives. And sometimes we're not very tender. Our hearts aren't very tender. It's so easy to get angry. It's so easy to divide. It's so easy to be belligerent in so many ways. The love of God has to turn us into compassionate people. We have to have a compassionate heart, a heart that beats with the love of Jesus. So the good news is, as we gather here tonight, is that in a world according to God, there is much more. There is so much more than we can just see. So much more than we can see. Jesus tells us that the bread is transformed, that he is the bread of life, that bread is transformed into a sign of God's love. The reality that we see, our eyes, the lens that we see our world, it has to be different. We have to see through the eyes of faith. We have to be able to look at this world through the eyes of faith. And so we have to see more than just bread. We have to see more than just bread. We have to be able to see more than just a fetus. We have to be able to see more than an untouchable. An untouchable. Untouchable because of color, untouchable because of sickness, untouchable because of race, untouchable because of 100 different reasons. Somehow we have to be able to see differently the liabilities in our life and what it costs us to be Christian. None of that happens unless we see through the eyes of faith. So God's story is larger than we can even imagine. The hardest thing to accept is a God who loves humanity to the point of giving and losing his life. Dying a nobody on an old cross. It makes God too real, doesn't it? It makes God too real. It makes God too present. And it challenges our limited sense of reality. So today, Jesus makes bread more than our perception of reality. The bread is more than what we can even imagine when we bring that to the altar. In fact, it goes against all our sophisticated and scientific 21st century sensibilities, doesn't it? After all, we know better. Jesus never explains all of that to us. All Jesus says is take, eat, drink, and you will live.